June 2016, Pune, Maharashtra. Two police officers stood before cameras and told India they had conquered Everest together. The color of their boots told a different story. The man whose boots those actually were was not a career mountaineer, not a government-sponsored expedition member, not someone with a documentary crew behind him. Satyarup Siddhanta was a software engineer from Bangalore who had spent 8 years quietly training with the Bangalore Mountaineering Club before he ever set foot on a serious peak. And in May 2016, 2 days before that police couple claimed to have stood there, he reached the summit of Mount Everest at 8,849 meters. A man on his way to becoming one of India's most decorated mountaineers, standing at the top of the world, alone with his camera, with no idea what was about to happen to that photograph. But those pictures were about to be used in a way he never imagined. The part that bothers me about this story is that it wasn't just one act of fraud, it was a chain that started with a single photograph, moved through a national celebration, and ended with the man who actually climbed the mountain being treated as the suspect. This is the story of the 2016 Everest fraud that shamed a nation. Welcome to Tourist Tragedies. Upor. By the time Satyarup Siddhanta stood on Everest in May 2016, he had already done something most professional mountaineers never attempt. In June 2014, he climbed Mount Denali in Alaska, the highest peak in North America, at 20,322 feet. Unguided, no Sherpa, no porter, no guide. He had spent 4 months in focused physical training just to prepare for the attempt. On the mountain itself, every member of the team carried a 20-kilogram backpack while simultaneously dragging a 20-kilogram sled tied to their waists, hauling the combined load from the lower slopes all the way up to 14,200 feet before the final push to the summit. That is 40 kilograms of equipment per person. To put that in perspective, that is roughly the combined weight of 2 average 10-year-old children, one strapped to your back, one on a rope dragging behind you, across some of the most dangerous terrain in the Northern Hemisphere. Denali is frequently described as competing with Everest in terms of cold, altitude stress, and sheer physical punishment. Satyarup completed the entire climb in 9 days via the West Buttress route, becoming the first Indian man to summit Denali unguided. He also did it with a documented history of asthma, a detail he had by this point essentially stopped mentioning because it had stopped being relevant. And honestly, when you look at what this man was doing, funding every expedition out of his own pocket, training in Bangalore between desk shifts at a software firm, dragging 40 kilograms up one of North America's most brutal mountains without a single guide, you begin to understand that Everest in 2016 was not an impulse. It was the result of years of methodical, underfunded, almost entirely unnoticed work. How does someone become this? It does not start on a mountain. It starts in a small town with an inhaler. Satyarup Siddhanta was born in Kolkata in April 1983 and raised in Berhampur, a quiet town in the Murshidabad district of West Bengal. His parents were both doctors. His childhood was ordinary in almost every way except one. From early on, he suffered from severe asthma, not the manageable kind, the kind where chasing a football across a schoolyard came with real consequences. His inhaler was as constant a companion as any of his friends. Eventually, he was sidelined from team sports entirely. He had wanted to join the Indian Air Force. He cleared the entrance exam, but he knew his lungs would fail the physical test, and so he chose engineering instead. Computer science at Sikkim Manipal Institute of Technology, a practical path for a boy who could not reliably breathe hard without medication. Sensible, safe. Then came a winter holiday in Darjeeling, sometime in the early 1990s. His family visited the Himalayan Mountaineering Institute, the same institute where Tenzing Norgay himself had trained. Satyarup was a child standing at the entrance. The Kanchenjunga range stood in the distance, and carved at the doorway were the words, "May you climb from peak to peak." He later said that in his wildest dreams, he would not have thought that sentence could ever apply to him. But it stayed with him. At 18, on a trekking trip with friends, something shifted. He stood above the valley floor and felt for the first time what it was to move through high places rather than be excluded from them. He made a quiet, private decision to keep coming back to the mountains. He started training. He lied about his condition to join group hikes, keeping his inhaler in his backpack on standby and never touching it. He pushed his limits deliberately, testing his own threshold, learning where the asthma ended and his will began. The condition was still there. It had just stopped being in charge. By 2005, Satyarup had graduated and moved to Bangalore to start his career as a software engineer at Oracle Financial Services. He was 22 years old, building a professional life from scratch in a new city. During the week, there were meetings, code reviews, architecture documents. On weekends, there were Bangalore Mountaineering Club training sessions. He was not yet known as a mountaineer. He was simply a young engineer from Berhampur who liked to climb things. In 2010, he trekked to Everest Base Camp for the first time. He came back to Bangalore and described it as love at first sight. The plan from that moment was fixed. Return, climb it. He had no sponsors, no national profile, no funding. What he had was a club membership, a salary, and a willingness to take personal loans for what the rest of the world considered a weekend hobby. Between expeditions, his life in Bangalore was full. He was learning horse riding, practicing photography, playing piano, and by his own description, pursuing a serious interest in magic. Not the metaphorical kind, actual sleight-of-hand magic. He was the kind of person who committed fully to whatever he was doing, and he was doing several things at once. June 2012, Mount Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, 19,341 feet. He led a team of 9 to the highest point in Africa. June 2013, Mount Everest, Russia, the highest peak in Europe. January 2014, Aconcagua in Argentina, 22,841 feet, the highest non-technical mountain in the world, unguided. June 2014, Mount Denali, Alaska, then Mont Blanc in France, which he reached after winning the Grab Your Dream contest, billed as the largest online hunt for adventurers in India, run by Cox and Kings. Each summit followed the same quiet pattern. Come home, return to the desk, save money, take another loan if necessary, plan the next one. Every year, he said, I would first take stock of the funds on hand, the mountain I could climb, and buy a new inhaler. It was empowering to know that I made it up those mountains without using it. When sponsors still did not come, he auctioned his summit mementos to fund the next expedition. When that was not enough, he crowdfunded. He had attempted Everest in 2015. He arrived at base camp and Nepal's earthquake struck. Everything was canceled. He admitted later that his first reaction was frustration. So much had been invested, so much was at stake. But in the rubble at base camp, he found a book called Dead or Alive. He went home. He reset. He received his mountaineering certification from the Himalayan Mountaineering Institute in Darjeeling, the same institute he had stood outside as a small asthmatic child, reading words carved at the entrance. He had gone back, just as those words had suggested. In May 2016, he returned to Everest, prepared, methodical, self-funded as always, and exactly where 6 years of work had been pointing. He summited on the 21st, at 8,849 meters. He took photographs. He planted the flag. He descended safely. Life was, quite simply, perfect. He had no idea that photograph was about to become the most complicated thing he had ever touched. June 2016, Pune, Maharashtra, a press conference. Dinesh and Tarkeshwari Rathod stepped before the cameras. They were police constables, Pune city force, not professional mountaineers, not sponsored athletes, 2 ordinary people by most measures who had done something extraordinary. They had, they announced, become the first Indian police couple to summit Mount Everest. India celebrated. Their names moved through newspapers within hours. Television channels ran the story. Officials from Maharashtra sent congratulations. 2 constables from a city police force had stood on the roof of the world, and they had proof. 2 summit photographs, one of Tarkeshwari, one of Dinesh, both at 8,849 meters, both holding India's national flag, both, by every visible measure, exactly where they said they had been. The photographs were submitted to Nepal's Department of Tourism. Standard procedure. The certificates would follow. The title was theirs. Nobody looked closely, not yet. A summit certificate from Nepal carries real weight. In India, it can change a career. Government employees have received promotions for summiting Everest. Cash awards, recognition that follows a person for the rest of their working life. The Rathods were 2 signatures away from all of it. Then someone looked at the boots. In Tarkeshwari's photograph, the boots are red. Crispy mountaineering boots, a specific model, a specific shade that does not change in photographs. In Dinesh's photograph, the boots are different. Yellow, a Sportiva pair, a completely different brand, a completely different color. 2 summit photographs, same expedition, same mountain, same day, different boots. On Everest, every gram of equipment is deliberate. Every item is selected, weighed, and carried with purpose across days of brutal altitude and cold. Nobody brings 2 complete sets of summit boots. The weight alone makes it impossible. There is no version of events in which one climber reaches the top, wearing red boots in one photograph and yellow boots in another. It was a detail easy to miss in the noise of a national celebration. Satyarup Siddhanta did not miss it. To understand what happens next, you need to understand how Nepal actually decides whether someone has climbed Everest. The answer is simpler than most people expect. Every climber submits 1 photograph of themselves standing at the summit to Nepal's Department of Tourism within 5 months of their expedition. That is it. No GPS verification, no independent witness requirement, no cross-referencing of timestamps or camera metadata. Just a photograph submitted on paper, reviewed by a department that processes hundreds of applications every season. Nepal earns approximately $11,000 per foreign climbing permit. With hundreds of climbers attempting the mountain every year, the financial incentive to approve applications and move on is considerable. Experts have noted that Nepal does not police summit claims carefully, and that dozens of false reports are submitted every single season. In an era when hundreds of guided climbers can summit in a single day, the kind of meticulous scrutiny that might catch a forgery does not exist at scale. What this means in practice is that the primary line of defense against a fraudulent summit claim is not the government, it is other climbers. For mountaineering photographs, investigators use several tools. The simplest is to crop out the climber entirely and reverse image search the background, the peaks, the ridgeline, the sky, to see if the image appears elsewhere online. A publicly available tool called Forensically has a clone detection feature that identifies areas of a photograph that have been digitally copied from one location and pasted into another. An augmented reality application called Peak Visor can analyze the peaks visible in a photograph's background and confirm whether the location matches the claimed summit. In the Rathod case, none of them were even necessary. The mistake that unraveled everything was not hidden inside a pixel or buried in a metadata file. It was visible to any person who had stood on Everest and simply remembered who they had stood with. Because the people in the background of Tarkeshwari Rathod's summit photograph were not strangers. They were Satyarup Siddhanta's teammates, and Satyarup Siddhanta had taken that photograph himself. Satyarup sees the photograph in the newspaper. He recognizes the people in the background, not the climber at the front, the figures standing behind her, his teammates, the ones who summited with him on the 21st of May. He goes to his camera. He finds his own summit photographs. He holds them next to the newspaper. The backgrounds are identical. The ridgeline, the figures, the sky, every detail. He looks at Tarkeshwari Rathod's face, then at the body beneath it. The jacket, the harness, the boots, his boots, red crispy boots, the pair he wore to the top of the world. Her face has been superimposed onto his body. India's national flag pasted over his hands. The boot color changed in the edit, incompletely, which is why Dinesh's photograph shows a different color entirely. 2 photographs, 2 edits, 1 original image, his. The technical sloppiness is staggering. Not one mistake, several, each one visible to anyone who knew what to look for. Satyarup goes public. He posts the photographs side by side. He files a formal complaint with Nepal's authorities. He tells reporters, "I looked at their photo and immediately recognized the people around. I took out my own photo to compare. I was shocked. It was my photo." Nepal's Department of Tourism opens an investigation, but investigations take time, and in the meantime, something unexpected happens. Nepal has now received the same image submitted by 2 separate parties. Until the investigation concludes, there is a question mark over both claims, including his. Nepal places Satyarup's own certification on hold. Satyarup Siddhanta was 33 years old. He had spent 6 years working toward this summit. He had taken personal loans, auctioned mementos, crowdfunded. He had trained through chronic asthma. He had waited out an earthquake at base camp. He had finally stood at 8,849 meters on the 21st of May and taken the photographs that proved it. Now those same photographs were being used as the reason to question whether he had ever been there at all. He posted about it publicly. "I don't know whether the family summited or not," he wrote. "All I want is that those pictures of mine should not be misused. Those pictures mean a lot to me." The investigation concluded. The findings were unambiguous. A case was filed against the Rathods under Section 66D of India's Information Technology Act. Nepal's Department of Tourism stripped them of their summit certificates and imposed a 10-year ban from all mountaineering in Nepal. The Pune police force terminated both of their positions. Satyarup received his summit certificate. He had climbed Everest. He had always climbed Everest. It had taken a formal investigation, a public complaint, and months of uncertainty to confirm what he already knew, and what any photograph of his red crispy boots would have shown from the beginning. When you lay the facts of this case in sequence, a picture begins to form, not just of two police constables who doctored photographs, but of a system that made the fraud almost inevitable. The first factor is Nepal's verification gap. To receive an Everest summit certificate, a climber submits one photograph. That is the entire process. No GPS data, no independent witnesses, no metadata review. A system built on trust, with no mechanism to test it. Nepal earns $11,000 per climbing permit and processes hundreds of applications every season. The financial incentive to approve rather than scrutinize is built into the structure itself. The second factor is the Indian reward system. Summiting Everest in India is not just a personal achievement. Government employees receive promotions, cash prizes. The Tenzing Norgay Adventure Award, one of India's most prestigious honors, carries a cash prize exceeding $6,000. When the reward for claiming a summit is that significant, the incentive to claim one, legitimately or otherwise, becomes correspondingly powerful. The third factor is premature celebration. The Rathods held a press conference. India celebrated. By the time anyone examined the photographs carefully, the story had already run in every major outlet. Retracting a national hero is a far harder task than simply not creating one. These three factors, a verification vacuum, outsized financial incentives, and institutional amplification before any fact-checking, are what fraud investigators call a perfect failure environment. Each layer of protection that should have caught the fraud had a gap in it, and all the gaps lined up at once. The Rathods were not alone in finding them. That same season, a second Indian climber submitted fraudulent Everest summit photographs. A Sherpa eyewitness with 7 Everest summits confirmed he had personally watched the rescue team carry that climbers down from 8,400 meters, 600 meters short of the summit. That climber went on to receive the Tenzing Norgay Adventure Award before the fraud was uncovered. The same broken system, the same year, a different victim. Every year, I would first take stock of the funds on hand, the mountain I could climb, and buy a new inhaler, Satyarup once said. It was empowering to know that I made it up those mountains without using it. He climbed Everest the same way he had climbed everything else, without shortcuts, without support, and without anyone watching. The 2016 Everest fraud endured as long as it did not, because the photographs were convincing, but because every layer of a system built to reward success had no mechanism to question it. This next climber was a government employee who won India's most prestigious adventure award for a summit he never reached. A Sherpa with 7 Everest ascents watched the rescue team carry him down from 8,400 meters. He collected the prize money anyway. How many times will this keep happening?